She wore the badge like armor. He carried his past like proof. But when their worlds collided on a quiet street in Savannah, everything unraveled. What began as a routine traffic stop exposed a pattern, not just one officer's misconduct, but a system built on silence. This is the story of a man who refused to be erased, of a town that finally decided to listen, and of a badge that could no longer shield the truth. If you've ever wondered what it looks like when one voice ignites a movement, this story is for you. Stay until the end, because the truth doesn't just demand to be told, it demands to be heard. It wasn't supposed to be a moment worth remembering, just a quick stop back in his hometown, a weekend with his godmother, a few errands, and then back to his world of boardrooms and biotech contracts. Marcus Bennett had traded the humid lanes of Savannah, Georgia, for high-rise views in San Francisco almost 10 years ago. He didn't miss the heat or the sideways glances, but every now and then, something pulled him home. This time it was Miss Janice's 68th birthday. She was more than a godmother. She was the woman who'd raised him when no one else could. So he came back, flew in Friday night, rented a car at the airport, picked up flowers, her favorite lemon soda, and a bundt cake from the corner bakery that still somehow survived Amazon. It was Saturday morning, and everything was supposed to be simple, the kind of morning where birds chirp louder than traffic. He had just turned off Victory Drive, windows down, letting in the warm air and the scent of pine and old pavement. Then he saw the flashing lights, first in his rear view, then reflected off the parked cars lining Azalea Street. He slowed, signaled right, pulled over, like he'd done a dozen times before, except this time something felt off. The cruiser stayed behind him, running, waiting. A moment later, the driver's side door opened. Out stepped Officer Linda Whitaker, mid-50s, hair tightly coiled into a bun that looked like it hurt, uniform pressed to perfection, walked like she owned the asphalt. One hand hovered over her sidearm, not in fear. Marcus could tell, but in habit. "License and registration," she said without inflection. No good morning, no explanation. Marcus kept both hands on the wheel. "Of course. I'm reaching into the glove box now." Slowly. He moved deliberately, passed her his license papers. Her eyes scanned them, then him. "You live in California?" "Yes, ma'am. Came back for the weekend. Visiting family. Rental car?" "Yes." "You know why I pulled you over?" "No." "Ma'am." She studied his face like it might confess something his words hadn't. "Step out of the car, please." His stomach dropped. "I'm sorry?" "Step out of the vehicle." Her tone didn't rise, didn't fall. Flat, final. He stepped. Out she began, circling him, slow, measured. "You match the description of someone involved in an incident this morning." Marcus blinked. "I just got in last night, haven't left the house until now." "You fit the description." She said it again like that made it true. Same height, same build, same color skin. He took a breath. "I understand you're doing your job, officer, but hands on the hood." She cut him off, and in that moment Marcus felt it. The familiar shift, from person to suspect, from man to threat. He complied. Quiet, resolved. "You're making a mistake," he said. She didn't answer. She called for backup. Code spoken like routine. Then, she cuffed him. "Resisting," she muttered. "But I didn't resist. You stepped toward me, raised your voice. I asked a question. That's not how I saw it. And just like that, the weekend was over. Not because of anything he did, but because of what she saw, or what she chose to see. The back seat was hotter than it should have been. The air conditioning wasn't on. The sun beat through the tinted windows like punishment. Marcus sat still, his wrists rubbing raw against the plastic cuffs. Every breath he took was measured, controlled. He wasn't scared. He was tired. Tired in a way that crept into his bones, the kind of tired that came from being questioned for existing. He watched. Officer Whitaker's reflection in the side mirror. She was talking to another officer now, a younger man, brown skin, maybe mid-30s. Name tag said Ramirez. He didn't look like he believed the story she was feeding him, but he didn't challenge her either. That silence, that was the loudest part. When Marcus was finally moved to the precinct, it was without ceremony. No Miranda rights read, no explanations offered. He was processed like a number, fingerprints, mugshot, then led to a bench with metal arms designed to be uncomfortable. Still no phone call, still no reason. Hours passed, a clipboard was shoved into his hands. Charge, resisting arrest. Charge, obstruction of justice. He laughed, not because it was funny, but because if he didn't, he might scream. He signed nothing instead. He asked for a lawyer. That got him a phone call. He called Sam Carter, old college friend turned civil rights attorney. They hadn't spoken in years, but Sam picked up on the second ring. "Tell me where you are," Sam said. "I'll be there in an hour." When Sam walked into the station, everything changed. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, just enough polish to say, "I know what I'm doing." He demanded the arrest report, asked to see the footage. Officer Whitaker sat at her desk, arms crossed. Her eyes didn't meet Sam's. He didn't need them to. He could see it in the way her jaw clenched, in the way her finger tapped the desk. She was used to control, used to silence. Sam spoke calmly, firm. "Either you provide the footage now, or we file for immediate court access." She hesitated. Didn't say no. Didn't say yes. But that pause? That pause said everything. An hour later, Marcus was out. Bailed out under protest. No apology. No explanations. Just a receipt and a list of court dates. As they walked toward Sam's car, Marcus looked back at the precinct, at the glass door, at the woman who'd watched him walk out. She stood there, still, expression unreadable. But Marcus didn't need to guess. He knew what he saw. He saw doubt. And that, he realized, was the first crack. The holding cell smelled like bleach and breath, the kind of stale breath that came from nerves, sleepless nights, and too much bad coffee. Marcus sat on a hard bench, back against the wall. The metal was cold, or maybe it was just the air in there. He folded his arms and leaned his head back, closed his eyes, counted slowly. He wasn't counting seconds. He was counting control, trying not to get lost in the why. Why him? Why now? He'd spent his life avoiding rooms like this, worked harder than most, just to be seen as average, had the suits, the degrees, the LinkedIn profile full of buzzwords and awards. None of it mattered in that moment. Not to them. To them, he was a maybe, a might have, a match the description. He had no watch, no phone, no way to mark the hours. Time moved in the flicker of fluorescent lights, in the groan of steel doors, in the coughs and murmurs of the other cells. When a guard finally opened his door, it felt abrupt. "Your lawyer's here." Marcus nodded, didn't speak, just followed. The interview room was a concrete box with a table and 2 chairs. Sam Carter sat in one, flipping through paperwork. He didn't look up right away. When he did, his face was calm. But his eyes, they burned. "Tell me everything," Sam said. Marcus did, word by word. No rage, no fire, just facts, like a ledger. Sam listened, didn't interrupt. When Marcus finished, Sam exhaled slowly. "This isn't just about you," he said. Marcus already knew. "I've seen this before," Sam continued. "Different town, same pattern." He pulled out a thin folder, opened it. Inside were 2 documents. Complaints, filed against Officer Linda Whitaker. Both dismissed. Both sealed. Both from black men. One from 2 years ago, one from 5. Same charges, same language. Non-compliant, aggressive, obstructed. Procedure. Marcus read the reports in silence. "They ever see court?" he asked. "Nope," settled quietly. Marcus closed the folder, sat back. "She counts on that. She counts on people walking away." "Not this time," Sam nodded. "I'll file the first motion tomorrow. We'll get the footage." They shook hands. No words needed. Later that night, back in a rented apartment, Marcus couldn't sleep. The bed was too soft, the air too quiet. He paced. Thought about the bench, about the folder, about the look on Whitaker's face when he walked out. She wasn't worried about what she'd done. She was worried about what he might do. He opened his laptop, started typing. Not a complaint. Not a rant. Record .names, .dates, .descriptions. If nobody else was going to keep track of the pattern, he would. Because this wasn't just about a bad cop. It was about a system that protected her. And if it had a pattern, it could be broken. Monday morning started earlier than most. Sam was already at the courthouse by 7:30, coffee in one hand, thick legal binder in the other. He wasn't flashy, didn't need to be. His work spoke louder than his wardrobe. He filed the motion for dashcam, footage and incident reports just after 8. Marcus met him there. Still tired, but more focused than ever. Whitaker's file isn't just sloppy, Sam said, flipping through pages. It's mechanical, like she's been writing the same report. For years, they sat side by side in the small conference room Sam used downtown. The binder was open on the table between them, pages marked with sticky notes, red tabs for inconsistencies, yellow for witness overlap, and blue for patterns. Marcus leaned in. She's never had to explain herself before, Sam nodded, and now she will. By noon, the motion had been acknowledged. The city had 5 days to respond. Until then, they'd dig. Sam had already contacted a private investigator, someone who used to work internal affairs in Atlanta. Meanwhile, Marcus spent his hours making calls, old classmates, community leaders, a few journalists he'd kept in touch with over the years. He didn't tell them everything, just enough to plant the seed. Watch this space, he said, and they did. Tuesday afternoon, Sam got a call. It was from a woman named Maya Rollins. She used to work dispatch for the Savannah PD. She didn't want to talk on record, not yet, but she remembered Whitaker. Always first to call it non-compliance, she said, even when it was someone just asking why. Sam thanked her, took notes, told her she could call back when she was ready. Wednesday, a local community blog picked up the bail release. Nothing detailed, just a name, a date, a question. Was it justified? By Thursday, the post had over 500 comments, some defending Whitaker, others questioning her history, and a few posting their own stories. One comment stood out, username, Old Sav Vet 62. She stopped me in 14, said my brake light was out, made me step out, didn't find anything, left me with a warning and a bruised wrist. Sam screenshot it, saved it. Patterns had a way of surfacing when people started feeling safe to speak. Friday morning, the city responded to the motion. They agreed to release the dashcam footage within 7 days, but the incident report redacted Sam's side. Typical, he said, but not enough to stop us. They drafted a second motion, filed it before noon. Saturday, Marcus visited his godmother, Miss Janice. She hadn't asked too many questions, but she knew something was heavy. "You all right?" she asked as she poured sweet tea into a glass. "I will be," he said. She nodded slowly, then added, "You always been stronger than you look." They sat on the porch, watched kids ride by on bicycles, listened to a neighbor's gospel playlist echoing down the street. Marcus breathed deep. This was why he came back. Not just for justice, but for every porch like this one. For the people who deserve to feel safe on their own block. Monday was coming, and with it the first real move. The legal battle had begun, and Marcus was ready. The courthouse steps felt taller that morning. Marcus stood beside Sam, watching as the building filled with people who looked more curious than angry. The blog post had done something. It cracked open a window, and through that window, sunlight poured in. By noon, someone had printed copies of the article. They passed it out by the bench near the fountain. People read and remembered. An older woman in a pink hat whispered to her friend, "I think that was the same cop who pulled my nephew over last year." Another, man probably in his late 50s, approached Sam quietly. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. but she stopped me outside my barber shop 2 summers ago. Said I was loitering in front of my own store. Sam nodded. Would you be willing to give a statement? The man hesitated, then said, Yeah, I think it's time. Stories started pouring in. A substitute teacher, a delivery driver, even a teenage girl who said Whitaker once followed her home for 3 blocks. No citation, no explanation, just silence and suspicion. Marcus listened to every word. He didn't interrupt, didn't rush. He just stood there, nodding, holding space. By midweek, local news caught wind. A short segment ran on Channel 9. The anchor's voice was neutral, but the footage wasn't. Whitaker walking briskly out of the precinct, Marcus outside the courthouse flanked by supporters, a side-by-side that said more than any caption could. Thursday, Sam's office got a voicemail, a woman's voice, shaky-low. My name's Renetta Carter. I used to work evidence intake. I remember Officer Whitaker. I remember some things that don't sit right. Call me back if you're serious. They did, and she was. Renetta met Sam and Marcus at a small cafe near downtown, wore sunglasses and kept looking at the door, but when she spoke, it was clear. She always brought in paperwork late, out of sync with the timeline. There were things missing, reports filed before the body cam synced, audio glitches. Sam took notes. Marcus just watched. Every sentence added a piece to the puzzle. I never said anything, Renetta admitted. I was scared. I needed the job. Marcus leaned in. You're saying there's a record? There was. I copied some of it. For myself, just in case. She pulled a USB from her purse. I don't want to be on camera, but I'll sign a statement. Quietly. That night. Sam backed up the files, cross-referenced them, and just like that, a new thread appeared. A pattern in the timestamps, in the redactions, in the way incidents were buried under mountains of vague language. Marcus stared at the screen, then whispered. They knew. Sam didn't answer. He just kept reading. By Friday, 2 more witnesses had come forward. Both men, both black, one from 2018, another from 2021. Different charges, same tone, same officer, same language in the report. Aggressive posture, non-compliant, threatening. Marcus looked at their affidavits, same fear, same silence until now. Word spread fast. At New Hope Baptist Church, Reverend Thomas mentioned Marcus's case from the pulpit. Justice doesn't knock, he said. It waits for someone to open the door. People nodded, some clapped. A ripple was turning into a wave, and it wasn't just Marcus anymore. It was all of them. Every ignored voice, every story that never made the report, now had a chance to be heard. The hearing wasn't supposed to be big, just a procedural moment, one of those things only lawyers and clerks care about. But by the time the doors opened, every seat was taken. Reporters lined the walls. A local camera crew hovered near the back, and, outside, folks who couldn't get in stood on the steps with signs. Some said, "We see you." Others just said, "Enough." Marcus walked in with Sam at his side. No tie, no flash. Just that calm look he'd worn since day one. Linda Whitaker sat across the aisle, full uniform, straight posture. But her eyes didn't move, didn't scan the room, didn't meet his. Judge Alina. Merriweather entered quietly, no bang of the gavel, just presence. Her reputation was one of balance. Fair but sharp. She glanced at the file in front of her, then at the room. Let's begin. Sam stood, walked to the center. Your Honor, we ask to admit the dashcam footage into the preliminary record. What you're about to see directly contradicts the official police report submitted by Officer Whitaker. The judge nodded. You may proceed. The lights dimmed. The screen buzzed to life, and then there it was. The moment Marcus in his rental car. Whitaker approaching, her voice clipped, her hand near her weapon. The commands, the shove, the cuffs. Not once did Marcus raise his voice. Not once did he move aggressively. And when the footage ended, silence, thick enough to taste. Judge Merriweather looked at Whitaker. "Officer, is this the interaction as you described in your report?" Whitaker adjusted in her seat. "Not exactly, Your Honor." "Did the defendant resist arrest?" Whitaker looked at Marcus. He didn't move, didn't blink. "No," she said finally. A murmur rippled through the room. Sam wasn't done. "Your Honor, we'd like to introduce testimony from 3 additional individuals who've had similar interactions with Officer Whitaker." Judge Merriweather raised an eyebrow. "Are these statements on record?" "They are." And then one by one they came forward. A school janitor, a retired bus driver, a warehouse supervisor. Each one steady, each one specific. Dates, times, words. Whitaker had used. Language mirrored in Marcus's report. After the 3rd testimony, the judge called a recess. Outside, the crowd buzzed. The footage had aired locally. Clips went viral. Social media lit up with hashtags. "We see you, Savannah." "Justice for Marcus" inside. Whitaker sat with her attorney, pale, hands clutched. Judge Merriweather returned, eyes firm. "I have reviewed the evidence and testimonies. There is substantial cause to move forward with a full misconduct trial against Officer Linda Whitaker, the fool." Gavel came down. Whitaker flinched. Marcus exhaled. It wasn't over, but now the truth had weight, and this time it couldn't be buried. News moved fast. By Tuesday morning, the footage had made its way to national news. A 90-second clip aired on a primetime segment. A voiceover called it a pivotal moment in a growing movement. Marcus's inbox was flooded. Journalists, old classmates, strangers, some sent encouragement, others sent stories. Each one carried weight. Sam reminded him, "This attention will fade. What we do with it, that's what matters." The city issued a statement. They called the trial an active investigation. Whitaker was placed on administrative leave, with pay. That part stung, but it was something. Behind closed doors, the police department began a quiet audit. Old cases, old stops. Names that had been whispered for years were now typed in reports. One by one, former suspects stepped forward. Their language wasn't loud, it was clear. "This happened to me, too. I always thought I was alone." Marcus stayed grounded. He wasn't chasing the spotlight, he was chasing change. He started a weekly gathering at the community center. It wasn't just about the law. It was about presence, about knowledge, about not walking alone. Every Thursday night, more chairs filled. Teenagers, mothers. Even an off-duty officer sat in back once, didn't speak, just listened. Sam dropped by when he could, sometimes to answer questions, other times to just show up, and that meant something. The trial was set for 6 weeks out. In that time, the town began to shift. Not loudly, but slowly. People stopped whispering. Teachers added rights education to their lesson plans. Churches brought in guest speakers. Even city council meetings started running longer. Because people had things to say, and now they believed someone might actually listen. As for Whitaker, she kept her distance, rarely seen. A few neighbors said she still lived in her townhouse on the east side. The porch light stayed off, no mail out front. She'd applied for private security. Jobs, but word traveled, and resumes don't erase headlines. Sam prepared his case methodically. Depositions, evidence logs, witness lists. Marcus helped where he could, but mostly, he stayed visible. Present, because sometimes showing up is the work. One night, Miss Janice found him on the porch. He was reading, something thick and marked up. She sat beside him, didn't speak for a while, then said, "You were always a fighter, even when you didn't know it." He looked up, smiled. "I'm just trying to make sure the next kid doesn't have to fight like this." She reached over, squeezed his hand. "Then you're doing exactly what you're supposed to." And for the first time in weeks, Marcus allowed himself to believe she might be right. The trial date arrived on a rainy Monday. Gray skies, slick streets, but people still came, folding umbrellas as they stepped into the courthouse. Some wore shirts with Marcus's name, others came quiet. But present, the courtroom buzzed with the weight of attention. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but reporters filled every bench they could. Judge Merriweather called order. The trial began. Sam made the opening statement. He didn't start with anger. He started with facts. A pattern, a system, a choice made over and over by one officer. Accountability, he said, isn't punishment. It's the foundation of trust. Then came the evidence, the footage, the statements, the patterns that Whitaker's reports tried to hide. Whitaker took the stand on the second day. She looked tired, smaller than she had before. Sam didn't attack. He asked, clear, concise. Did you believe Marcus Bennett was a threat? She paused. I followed procedure. That's not what I asked. She looked down. No. Then why escalate? No answer, he continued. Had you ever questioned your pattern of stops? She glanced at her lawyer, then at the jury. No, she admitted. And there it was, the truth she hadn't meant to say. The defense tried to recover, talked about training, stress, split-second decisions, but the jury didn't flinch. They'd seen the footage, they'd heard the stories, and by the fifth day, they had made up their minds. The verdict came fast, guilty, on charges of misconduct and falsifying a report. Whitaker didn't cry, didn't speak, just sat still. The badge that once sat on her chest, now locked in evidence. Outside, people gathered. No shouting, no chants. Just a wave of exhale, a release. Marcus stood on the steps. Didn't speak to cameras. Didn't. He just stood there, and for a moment, the city stood with him. Weeks passed. The headlines moved on, but the people didn't forget. The workshops grew. More volunteers came. The city council invited Marcus to help revise their community oversight policies. And for the first time, people believed change might actually stick. One night, during a workshop, a boy named Jalen raised his hand. 16. Big eyes. Quiet voice. What if they don't listen to us? Marcus looked at him, smiled. They will. Eventually, because now we're loud enough not to be ignored. Jalen nodded. Didn't ask anything else, just sat straighter in his chair. In a small apartment on the edge of town, Linda Whitaker watched the footage again. She didn't fast forward, didn't skip. Just sat there, alone, listening to her own voice, her own decisions. She didn't reach for a drink, didn't scream, just closed the laptop and stared at the wall. For the first time, she didn't try to defend herself. She just sat with it. Because sometimes, silence is the beginning of something else. And for the rest of the town, it wasn't just a victory. It was a shift. One they could build on. One they would remember. And maybe, just maybe, one they would never have to repeat. Marcus didn't set out to change a system. He just wanted to drive home without fear. But his story reminded a city that silence protects no one. And courage isn't loud. It's consistent. In courtrooms, in classrooms, on porches, and in every voice that now dares to speak. Whitaker lost her badge, but the truth gained something greater. Momentum. This wasn't about vengeance, it was about visibility, and what happens when we finally see each other. If this story moved you, don't scroll past. Share it, talk about it. Because stories like this don't just belong on screens, they belong in communities, in change, and in the moments we choose to listen. Thank you for watching, for caring, and most of all, for remembering that justice starts with paying attention. Let's keep paying attention, together.